So the biggest thing you can learn as a coach is that you just need to keep learning, and not just academically, learning through your experience, but learning at the start of each coach-athlete relationship, and not even just at the start. Like, you can learn new things about an athlete you've been coaching for 5 or 6 years, and that relationship could change as much as you have. Just accept you don't know everything. That's the first step. It's just kind of knowing that there's a lot more to learn, and you're doing your athletes a disservice if you're not always trying to learn a bit more, even if it's just about them. But just keep trying to learn. That's what I would say.
This is Stokely, where we tried to be involved, to listen and learn, for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told. Stokely is a creative endeavour to listen, learn and evolve through the art of conversation. And here's your host, Mael.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Stokely. Thanks a lot for joining us. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians upon the lands where this podcast is listened to and created. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to recognise their everlasting connection to land, waters and culture. Today I get to speak with my friend Robbie Britton, someone who has had a huge influence on my life and someone who has helped me a lot in many challenges, and he's also been able to share many challenges with me along the way. Robbie is best known for a number of things, let's just say. One of them is his ability to be an exceptional coach and help a lot of people to achieve goals which seem impossible when first incepted. Robbie is also someone who has achieved incredible goals himself in life, and one of that is winning bronze at the World 24-Hour Championships and achieving a team gold at the same time. Recently, Robbie has had to change his creative endeavours to focus a little bit more on cycling, and that's taken him to achieve finishes at some huge races, cycling over 2,000 kilometres throughout the European Alps. We get to talk all about that, and also how he's helped a good friend of ours, Dan Lawson from Rerun Clothing, to achieve the record from running from the southernmost end of Great Britain to the northernmost end, and what that all involves. So, I hope you like a good ramble, because Robbie is well known for that, and he definitely has a good ramble on this podcast. And we really hope that that ramble helps you to spark a conversation in your own life, because that's what it's all about, maintaining the art of conversation. So, thanks a lot for joining us, and please reach out to us if you have anything to say, good or bad, even ugly. We really welcome it all. So, we really hope you enjoy the conversation, and thanks for tuning in.
On that bike race, I had some caffeine, like chewing gum and stuff. And the chap, I cycled a bit with one chap, and he said it was like a whirlwind of words. Just hit him for like an hour and a half up a climb. Just, he didn't get a word in edgeways. It was a combination of that and him asking me about doping. Just, time immediately passed.
Now you've gone there. Let's talk about the bike race, mate. You correct me if I'm wrong, but the most recent bike race you did, the Three Peaks bike race, it took you 5 days, 8 hours and 55 minutes. And it was approximately aimed at 2,000 kilometers, but I think you can choose your route to some degree. So how much did you end up cycling in the end?
Today I never added it up. I think around 2,000k, maybe just under. You add in a couple of extras, a couple of diversions, cycling to the odd bike shop to get some repairs, and like just looking for a good bus stop to sleep in. So yeah, I think it's about 2,000k and just under 30,000 meters of climbing. And yeah, you picked that. There's 3 checkpoints as such, which are the tops of certain peaks or cols, and just a free route between. So you pick whatever route you want, and obviously because it's the Three Peaks bike race, you pick a hilly route. Some people picked a flatter route and it was faster. That's boring. Like on the bike, it is like going on like the kind of the A roads that are just somewhat scary as well. Not that I've managed to avoid all the scary roads, but yes, I just picked we went over some like fantastic passes. The race itself went over the Glockner Pass and up to the Edelweiss Spitz, and then the next checkpoint was the Col de Senech, which is above Sion in the Valais in Switzerland. And then people might know Chamonix. We went through Chamonix down into Passy, the other side, and up over Megève and towards Grenoble and Albertville. And then the last summit was Mont Ventoux, which again is reasonably famous, the Beast of Provence. And from there was a 468 kilometre set route to the finish. So we all did that. And it's good 5 days. I think it was 5 days, 8 hours, something like that, 30 odd minutes.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Because
good fun.
You started in is it Vienna? And then you went to Vienna to Nice, hey?
Yeah, Vienna to Nice via Italy, Switzerland, and the last, so however much was in France.
So good, man. Because because our history as friends has all been basically based upon us being obviously great people, and then the small fact that we've done a lot of running together, and you've been somewhat of a encouragement in my running life, and then that trickled obviously into my life in general. You've provided me with many couches to accommodate me and sleep on. But mate, tell me what's going on with you. Many years ago now, but it's still hugely relevant. You did win a bronze medal in the World 24-Hour Championships, World Championships, and now you're not doing a whole lot of running. We can get to your comeback though, which is going to be exciting. But how do you find yourself in these epic bike races, mate? Because you've done it in a period of time where I haven't been able to catch up with you and try and talk you out of it. So what's led you astray, so to speak, mate?
And surely you learnt by now, and talking me out of something I want to do is a lost cause. So that was 2015 in Turin, was the World 24-Hour Champs, individual bronze, but team gold. So that was one of the big things. And I believe Australia were team bronze maybe that year, or team silver. I don't want to do them a disservice. Since then I've had an issue with the right lateral chain on my with my running. That's just seen it tighten up, and I've always had a bit of an issue with this right hand side. Kind of my right quad is often the focus. When I go to like a physio masseuse, they get like a new one. They always say like, "Oh, well this leg's not right." Often there's the look of shock on their face that my right leg is just that, like, I don't know, knotted, just battered. And it turns out it's been doing a lot of the work for most of my running career. But particularly since like 2016, I've had some injury issues, and I've just run through it. And then last summer, it just come to a head. And I was actually, it's probably everyone says this, but no word of a lie, I was in the best shape I've ever been in. And I was just like, I am ready to rock the world. And just something pinged around it was hard to diagnose. It moved around a little bit, this injury, as they often do. And I jumped on the bike, which I think probably caused another injury because the seat height was ridiculously high. I've never had a bike fit. So then that added to the issue with the diagnosis, and I couldn't get back running, but I was in great shape. So I just entered a bike race, which was the Trans-Pyrenees, which I then I then DNF'd about 44 hours in, around Font-Romeu in the French Pyrenees. I was cold, my lights stopped working, my navigation stopped working. I made many errors, and then took the easy option out because I knew my wife wasn't far away in her van. So that was a lesson. And then I just got the bug a bit with the bike racing. It feels like maybe where ultra running was, not even just 10 years ago when I started, but maybe 10 years before that. It's a really small community. It's really kind of bare bones, even though it's cycling, which you imagine there would be like loads of like fancy professionals dropping into it. And there are, like one of the recent races saw Laurens ten Dam and Christian Meyer as two of the pros, like ex-pros, like recent ex-pros as well, like competing. But it's very much as a chap at the start, or a lady who's the race director. The first one I finished was a female race director, and she just set us off. And there's a small team that kind of have planned this like absolute sufferfest of a route. And sometimes it's just Juliana Bullen, who organised that. I did this race, the 2 volcano sprint from Naples to Sicily, and it went up Vesuvius to start and Etna to finish. And you'd be cycling along thinking, that road over there looks well good. Why are we on this dirt track? Like, what? And I would message the race director, like, why have you picked this particular route? I can see a really nice road there. I applaud your sadism, and as a masochist, probably a fellow masochist, I appreciate it in many ways. But it's particularly sadistic so that we can see the nice road. And that one was. Yeah, that was after the DNF in the first one. I just jumped on. I was like, I want to do another one. I know I can finish this. And that one was 1100k with 25,000 meters up and down. So it suited me because I like climbing. I'm not very good at going downhill, and I'm particularly not very good on the flat. So I've been working on those. But yeah, it was awesome. Awesome. Just kind of, it's like, so when I had picked up this injury, I was kind of contemplating going longer with the ultra running. I wanted to try some 48-hour, maybe up to some 6-day races. So the bike racing lets me do that with a body that's not quite ready for it. So that was why I was going towards it. I was actually signed up to a 55-hour race in 2016 when I had a second knee surgery. And I don't think the knee surgery was necessary. Like, if a surgeon looks in anyone's knee, they're going to see some cartilage floating about, like, especially if you've been running up and down mountains and falling over, and just the background of American football, rugby and soccer. Yeah, the knees look trashed if you look inside them. But I think this issue's been a long-term one before that surgery. I think it was, a problem. So yeah, I've been doing some bike racing basically, just because it's a lot of fun, and you get to learn. I get to like step into new kind of realms of sleep deprivation and kind of mental battles, which are just what I was looking for. So that's why I went for it.
So what have you discovered about like sleep deprivation in a 5-day race?
I mean, it's different to the running in the ways that it's the logistics involved. So if you're in a running race and you say it's a 6-day race, it's often be like on a 1K, 1 mile loop. You'll have somewhere set up to sleep, so you can, when you feel tired, you're not that far from a bed. Whereas the bike racing, depending on how you do it, so some people carry a bivy bag, and some people carry tents. And as soon as they feel tired, or they can find a decent spot, depending if you're in a city or not, if you're at the top of a pass, you're not going to jump into that to sleep up there. But logistics come into it. I generally cycle with quite a light setup. I'll take a down jacket rather than a sleeping bag, and just find a good bus stop. Or I think last time I slept in bus stop, the front of a light showroom, because they were all on, and they provided some warmth, and I just been soaked, so it was good to dry off. And I also slept in a car park ticket office. It was a good one. I had a plug, could charge me bits and bobs. But so there's kind of an element of finding somewhere to sleep. Whereas I think in the running one, you can sleep where you need to sleep. Something like the Tour de France, you're generally going to try and get to the life bases. But again, you might have a refuge or something, and the consequences are different. So like cycling sleep deprived on a busy road is pretty rubbish. Cycling sleep deprived on a steep downhill descent with like drop-offs, again, can be, you would have thought you would be awake for that because it's quite hairy. But I did find myself falling asleep on one descent towards the end, and I had to, I was having conversations with myself to keep awake, and just generally to chat to myself. And I remember at one point not understanding the question. I hadn't heard the question that I was answering. At that point, I realised I'd probably been asleep whilst I asked the question. And it was something to do with like football or something like Leicester Football Club. I was like, why am I talking about this? And I'd ask myself a question, and I'll often do it in different languages. So then it's kind of challenging. It feels like there's two people. And that was a kind of, I had to stop and like slap my face a little bit because the drop off, the consequences were reasonably high. But yeah, then I was saved on that one because I don't know if I've told you this story, Mail, but as I was descending the final descent, and you've got your phone, so I messaged in I got a group of the athletes I coach, and I was messaging them in there. And as I was going down this hill, from the darkness, it's got to a point with like lampposts, a wild boar, or Waldschwein in German, which was quite a better name, ran out and ran alongside me for maybe 4 or 5 seconds whilst I screamed at it like I was terrified. These things are dangerous. It was big and all. And then it kind of decided, it kind of looked at me and was like, do I smash this guy's bike up and like throw him to the ground or not? And then it ran off again because I think it was equally terrified. And then from that point onwards, no sleep. No sleepiness, because the adrenaline was just coursing through my veins. And I took that as like, this is something I can use when crewing someone. I like this. I just have to get a costume of a wild boar. So I don't think there's anyone living near that area, but if they were, this was probably about 10, 11 at night, me just cycling downhill, after talking to myself in different languages, then screaming like boar, 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 and then just cycling downhill.
Oh, right. That's epic. I don't know if I've told you this story, but it reminds me of that 24-hour race that I did here in Melbourne. And there was this lady was sitting on this far corner of the track, or this far turn of the track, when not like no one else was. And she was just there, and she was awesome at drawing. So she would draw these different drawings and then put a little motivational note above and below it, or she would write different questions, and it would be like a really funny answer. And then so you do a couple of laps, you think about what she wrote, and then you'd find out the answer a little bit later on, and she'd draw it as well. And I was like, oh, this is so entertaining. Like, kudos. Not to mention it was like 3 a.m. And then the next thing, she's not there anymore, and she just leaves the sign and it says, be right back. And there's just like a photo of a dinosaur. And then 2 laps later, she's there in a huge dinosaur costume, like just dancing as a dinosaur, like 3 a.m. in a 24-hour race. It blew my mind.
Was it a Sri Chimnoy race?
No, it was the Coburg 24-hour. It was just
Sri Chimnoy ones have people just like in the middle of nowhere playing, like, is it a sitar and stuff like ding, 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 ding.
Oh yeah. No surprise.
That sounds like a good person to have at a 24-hour race.
Amazing. Yeah, so I think your boar idea would be great. Yeah.
I think definitely, if you need waking up, just get someone to terrify you. It definitely works. Like there was no risk of me going to sleep after that. I was fully awake, like wide awake, and I'd been sleep deprived because I think at that point night before I'd slept for about 40 minutes in a bus stop, and then 10 minutes at the top of a climb on the floor. Like it was a quiet road, so it wasn't a public road. I don't think. At least I made that decision at the time. I just slept on the road in the sunshine. It just after sunrise. So 50 minutes of sleep in the 36 hours beforehand, or 48 hours beforehand. So that was why you needed one board at that stage to keep you up. Wow.
So in the total 5 days, just over 5 days, how much sleep did you have in total?
So it started at like 4 p.m. So I went straight through the first night. The second night I had a half-hour nap. But then I was cycling through these kind of orchards, and they turned the sprinklers on. So I got absolutely soaked. So the plan was to go through the second night with maybe a 30 and a 90, or just a 30 and another 30 minutes sleep. So that's when I got into the light shop, because I was shivering, and I laid down and had all my clothes on, and I just slept for, I think it was like 3.5, 4 hours then. But I had to reset. Basically, I made some mistakes because I was that tired, and who expects the sprinklers to come on when you haven't got your waterproofs on? I had to like cycle fast through it and get to like a dry spot. You could see I hadn't soaked the ground, and then actually managed to get soaked, get my waterproofs on. I was already just completely soaked. So then every time I went downhill, I was starting to shiver. I'm not great on the cold on the bike. I'm still learning about some of the kits and the techniques. Then the next night, 90 minutes in a bus station, in a car park. Yeah, in the car park ticket office. The night after that, I had 3 hours in like a Formula One hotel, because you self-check in. So you don't use. Some people use hotels, but I think if you're like, it's just a lot of faffing around. So the check-in, the explaining that you're going to leave at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning, that you need to have your bike in the room so you can actually leave at 3 in the morning, and you just generally, I'd avoid hotels, but then use them as a reset. So like the Formula One ones are great because you just check in with your card, and there's like a vending machine with microwave meals in. Whee! That was lovely. And then so that's half, say 4, 5.5. Then 3 that night, because if you're going into a hotel, you want to make the most of it. 8.5, and then 40 minutes, 50 minutes, so like just over 9 hours over the 5 days.
Solid.
Yeah, took a while to recover from. Well, I didn't get a chance to recover from it.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a bit later for sure. Yeah, I couldn't believe what you did after that race for recovery. Nice work. So yeah, I mean that's pretty. I mean, you know, that's definitely not common. They say that, I don't know if you know, but a lot of people recommend between 7 and 9 hours sleep a night. Actually,
Yeah,
for a general healthy human. Especially if you're exercising to extreme levels, also helps with the recovery. Same with hydration, just in case you didn't know. So what would you like, because you're a coach, you help a lot of endurance athletes. Like, is there any way that you can go about preparing yourself for that sleep deprivation, or you just train and, look after yourself as much as you can, and then when the race comes around, you just get out there and experience doing what you need to do without it?
I guess with stuff like this, when you get into the more extreme ends with the sleep deprivation, it's not just a training block beforehand or kind of like 1 year of running. It's your whole life experience that comes into it. So be it kind of, I know, even if you've worked night shifts beforehand, or if you've built up to a 5-day race, you hopefully in the build-up you've done different stuff that involves sleep deprivation to a lesser level. And it doesn't just have to be running. It might just be that you're crewing a 24-hour race for someone else, and that helps you deal with like not only your own sleep deprivation, but looking at how other people deal with it and learning in that way. So there's plenty of opportunities to learn. To kind of ease yourself into it. The bike racing is quite nice. I actually suggested this to an athlete of mine who's aiming towards the Tour de France in 2021. I said, why don't you try one of these bike races? Because he does cycle a bit. And it's a less impactful way of experiencing sleep deprivation. Because if you do it in a running race, generally you're going to need some months to recover, because the impact of the mileage in those days is massive. Whereas you can experience it in the cycle race without too much kind of muscle damage. Like the fatigue feels less. So there are certain things that still have a long time to recover. And then the flip side of that is when the sleep deprivation comes into it, the more you are on top of everything else, the less it's going to affect you. So if your pacing's good, your nutrition's on point, your kit's like you're down to a T, when it gets to 3 in the morning and your decision-making skills are just terrible, if you've made better decisions before that point, or if you've practiced making those decisions in a tired state, you're less likely to come undone. I think that was one of the issues I had in the first race, is the sleep deprivation. I think I did a half-hour sleep. No, I did a 5-minute sleep in the first race I did. And then after 44 hours, I'd had another 90-minute sleep. But I was making poor decisions because I wasn't used to the environment. I hadn't practiced cycling through the night. It was my first night cycle, 2 of them on the row. So there was loads of mistakes I would have made without the sleep deprivation. So I made more when I was tired. And it's kind of being prepared for that, being kind of, just be on top of everything else. If you're confident on everything else, then push the limits of the sleep deprivation. If you're not sure about your pacing, if you're not sure about your nutrition or your navigation, if there's a navigation aspect to it, don't push the sleep deprivation as much. Kind of ease yourself into it. And you'd be surprised how good you feel after like a 3-hour sleep. Like that. So when I raced the second time in November last year, the first night I did a half-hour sleep in a bus stop. I had a lot of issues from the start with my bike and with my navigation devices. So I was at the back of the race, and I overtook a lot of people because they all stopped to sleep. And then every night after that, because I was sleeping in hotels on that one. It wasn't worth going in there for like a 90-minute sleep or like anything less than like a decent 3-hour sleep. But after 3 hours sleep, I wasn't sleep deprived for the rest of the day. It was until the next night, and I was fine. So like 3 hours sleep was. So if you're going to do races like this, just try out. I mean, again, you can start by just doing a run late at night, a training run late at night, having a 5 to 6 hour sleep, and then going out early the next morning. But I mean, plenty of us get sleep deprivations in other avenues of life. I mean, go back to if you're a fan of going out like all nighters, like a rave or something, then you're building up that skill set. It's funnily enough. If you've worked shifts, plenty of people I coach that cope well with the sleep deprivation have worked shifts for years on years on years. And yeah, like a night shift, you've got the same techniques for getting yourself through it.
I hear a lot of parents also have this really good experience with sleep deprivation. I've yet to experience it myself, and I know you're the same, but they talk about that a lot.
Yeah. So again, like I've coached a lot of people who are new parents, and yeah, they end up like tired a lot of the time. But you could look at it. There are obviously downsides to that, but you can look at it as a way of developing the ability to run through that deep set fatigue that comes from missing sleep for weeks and weeks and weeks.
What else have you taken from, having to go from that, you identified as a runner for so long and a professional, and, so much of like your career is based around running. How's that transition been, having to basically just kind of put that on ice for a bit and adopt a whole new sport and be okay with it, essentially?
You just got to take the enjoyment we can from what you do. You could kind of sit there and kind of be, I miss running. Which is, sometimes I did. I miss running. But I could focus on that, or I could focus on how much I was enjoying the other aspects. The cycling, the seeing new places, the getting to know my local area a bit better than I would have done running. The adventures, the people. There's some really good people I've met within the ultra cycling world. And at the end of the day, what makes me a good runner isn't my kind of graceful long legs and like elegant style, elegant gait, as we've discovered. It's my ability to endure, I feel, is probably what makes me good at ultra running. And there was a lot of crossover. I'm an endurance athlete. It doesn't have to be on a bike or like running or any other kind of medium of endurance. I'm good. That's what I feel. I identify as. I identify as an endurance athlete. So I just cross it over. And I obviously joke with some of the cyclists. They're like, well, you're getting beaten by a runner. Because I still identify as a runner. I think one of the guys from the second race I did, Rob, he said to me, "Oh, surely you feel like you're a cyclist now." And I don't really feel like a cyclist, even though I'm doing a decent amount of cycling like each week. But I don't think I'm a cyclist because it doesn't make sense.
It's good to hear, mate. It's good to hear. What makes you, because I've been able to sit in the background for a number of years and watch you develop as a coach as well. What are the things that make you a good coach? Endurance?
No, not really. You feel like you've got to endure your athletes. I feel like I would question the relationship I had there if it felt like a battle of endurance. What makes you a good coach? Well, so for 2 years, from last year, 2 years back, I did a master's degree in performance coaching at the University of Stirling. And my dissertation project was what makes a good coach. What was it? So I did a pilot project on how do you define a good ultramarathon athlete and coach relationship, and then how do we the main project was how do we develop that. So like the longevity of the relationships came out as one of the aspects that kind of showed a good coach athlete relationship. Because if you just use results, I mean, you can get someone come to you who's a really, really fast athlete, and you can be a bad coach and they're still going to win races. There's plenty of examples of that. The bad coaches just not helping an athlete that much, and the athlete still wins the race, and people go, "Wow, what an amazing coach!" Well, not necessarily so, because There are fast people that are going to win races regardless of the coaching you give them. And I've got that. I've got people I coach who, like, like, they're fantastic athletes. My impact as a coach is, I like to think it's there, but it's not the reason they're winning these races. They're the reason they're winning these races, and you just try and have a positive impact on that. So that what measures work? Well, longevity of relationships. Because if they're not getting the results they want, or if they're not getting the fulfillment from the coach-athlete relationship, if the training plan isn't suited to them, isn't varied, isn't interesting, then you generally find they tend to wander off. If a coach has good long-term relationships, then it's a sign that they're doing a lot of those things right. And it's not very, there's no set amount of time. But yeah, so that was what I looked at. And then I did my master's dissertation was what helps develop that longevity. And I interviewed a few coaches. We had a group discussion with American and UK coaches in the main project. And what come out? Trust was a big thing. Developing trust between the athlete and the coach. And it works both ways. As a coach, you've got to trust that the athlete's been honest. And as an athlete, you've got to trust that the coach has got your interests at heart, that they have an athlete-centered approach that's in their best interests. And again, I look at it. I could coach however many people and give them 120 miles a week, every one of them, with long interval reps every week. And you know what? I'd get some decent results. I would also break a lot of people. So if you use the results simply as a measure of success as a coach, again, is that a good way of doing things? Because you get the results. But then that, again, where the longevity comes into it, because people would drift away. People get injured too often, or they aren't getting the personalised approach that they need, or the individualised rather than personalised. But everyone's different. You can have two people that are they've got identical backgrounds and identical goals going forward, but life treats them differently. And that's like where it comes into it. You might be, one person might have more stress at work, one might work different hours, might have a different job, might have different family effects, or just be in the same situation. That's what's interesting with the coronavirus, is how people have reacted differently to this. It's a very similar situation for everyone, if you're based in the same location, but people react differently to it. They take different stress from it, and some thrive, some find it a real struggle. And you have to recognise that as a coach, is how you help that athlete deal with the situation they're in, rather than this is what you should be doing, is what's best for you. So what was the question? I just went off on one there.
Mate, I fully expect you to go off on anything I ask you. It is pretty interesting, like you say, like everyone deals with this situation with regards to the pandemic differently, you know, and it's so clear, especially in the running world. You know, you see some people just start running 100 miles around their backyard, and some people just thinking, oh, I'm just going to use it as a rest period, you know, and just like, well, two different extreme ways people are dealing with it. In saying that about coaching, we've talked about it a lot in the past. There's so many coaches now in, say, like the running space, particularly, I feel, and ultra running space. You know, someone gets a half decent result or wins a race or two races, and then automatically they're now like qualified as a coach. In doing your master's in performance coaching, like what were the main things that you took away from that made you realize, like, okay, this is how you really work with people to get the best out of them?
So I mean, our first thing I'll say is that you and I, we both started. I mean, you do a bit of coaching. I do a bit of coaching, and we started out as someone who won a couple of races and decided they wanted to make a living as a coach. That's how my motivation at the start was, to support my own athlete lifestyle. So that's to say that, like, everyone starts out in the same place. There's not many people in our world, I don't think there's any, that come from like an academic coaching background, or there's no channels you go through to become a coach, and then they do it in the formal kind of way. So we all start out like that. But I feel it's probably one of the biggest things that I learned from the Masters was just how little I actually know. And I think that's what the way you've got to approach this, is that some of the experts across loads of different sports, they're not it's not insecurity. It is a little bit of insecurity, but kind of they're just they know there's a lot more out there. They're not kind of super confident in everything. Like if you don't know the answer to something, it's okay to say you don't know the answer. And I think you can see that if someone's got all the answers, they've figured it all out, they've got a program that works for every athlete that comes to them, then I'd be wary. And I'm not saying like any athlete, there might be different coaches that are right for them. As an athlete, you've got to find a coach that's right for you. And it may be that a coach that's right for you is someone who's for a lot of other people wouldn't be right. And a good coach can adapt, but sometimes it's just not going to work out. So sometimes, like even the best coaches in the world, they don't work well with certain people. And that's no one's fault. That's just how it is. It's just kind of, yeah, a good coach. Good coach like knows they don't know everything. And I look at it at the start of every coach-athlete relationship as a new. It's a time to learn again. It's a learning opportunity, but you've got to not start from scratch because you're coming in with more experience each time. You're coming in with more knowledge, although that knowledge is sometimes changing. But that knowledge is it's outside of that coach-athlete relationship. You've got to then take the knowledge and experience you've got to learn about the athlete in front of you, where they've come from, where they want to go, and you've got to meld it together because doesn't necessarily work as simple as like apply this to the athlete and you're going to get these outcomes because everyone's different. Everyone has a different reaction to training. Everyone has a different lifestyle. Everyone copes differently with different situations. So it's kind of finding, the biggest thing you can learn as a coach is that you just need to keep learning, and not just academically, learning through your experience, but learning at the start of each coach-athlete relationship, and not even just at the start. Like you can learn new things about an athlete you've been coaching for 5 or 6 years, and that relationship can change as much as you have. So it's just accept you don't know everything. That's the first step. It's just kind of knowing that there's a lot more to learn, and you're doing your athletes a disservice if you're not always trying to learn a bit more, even if it's just about them. But just keep trying to learn. That's what I would say. But then I come as part of my upbringing was that. If you want to do well in life, you push yourself into education. And I can't say I've always done that, but I've always seen education as a sensible goal. I suppose is the way to do it, as a way to better yourself. So that's how the paths I've gone down. But other athletes and other coaches, they don't do it more. I've chosen one path, a more formal approach. But there are plenty of other ways to learn, and you don't need academic qualifications to be a good coach. Far from it. There are plenty of coaches out there who not only don't have an academic background, but probably wouldn't thrive within one. I don't know. I don't think I thrive within an academic setting. Some of the people I work with on the masters, like chap who I get my coaching from, Tom Craggs. Oh blimey, that man is he's very academic. When it comes to any subject I want to chat to him about, I know I'm going to get a full answer. And if he doesn't know something, he will either. He will let you know, but he'll then learn about it and come back to you with a bloody full answer. But it's finding as a coach what's the best for your progression. And again, looking at it like that way. So not always learning, but maybe always learning, but always looking to improve. And I think there's a balance out there. We see a lot of coaches that the importance is looking good as a coach. And from a business point of view, if it's your business, then you've got to look good as a coach. You haven't always got to bring new people in. If you've got high turnover of athletes, but you've got good marketing or you look good, you're going to bring more people in. So from a business point of view, that still works. You can be a bad coach and make good money. But I think, you've got, for me, and the ego's there. You want to be recognised for your coaching, but is that in the best interest of your athletes? Can you do things that make decisions that, because you want to look at a better coach, that then directly affect the athletes you're coaching, and therefore it's not athlete-centered because you're more concerned about them getting good results rather than reaching their potential. And that it's a conflict, especially if it depends what side of again, I've got to earn a living. That's how I do it. I'm a professional coach. I'm not a professional ultra-marathon runner. I do a bit of writing, I have a little bits and bobs, but I'm a professional coach. That's how I earn a living. So I've got to be doing it right. But
Like
I think you can do it right by focusing on the athletes and making sure that you're good enough for them without getting too obsessed. And I have conversations quite a lot when I see like credit given out and the coaches, and you want some of that. It's human nature to kind of want to be respected by your peers. But there are different ways to go about that I think can be healthy and or unhealthy.
Yeah. It's like I feel like that kind of theory is, I mean, it's very similar to that, the Kaizen theory of striving for 1% improvement every day. And it could be applied to, whether you are a coach or whether you are an athlete or whether you're just a person doing anything, always trying to just find that small area of improvement and understand that it's the small things that add up, as long as you're willing to kind of venture into that area and be honest that, we don't know what we don't know. Just keep like learning small things, be it through reading something or be it through experiencing something, and then but always being open to it and understanding that you don't know everything.
And being open to it as well, because it might not necessarily be the small things we need to learn. It can be some of the basic shit that we've got to make sure we get right. And we can forget that as well. You can know something and forget it, or too proud to kind of say, "Oh, I'm not quite sure about that." It was what was it? I think it's British snowboarding saying that they were so far behind the rest of the world. They didn't focus on marginal gains. They focused on maximal gains. Because marginal gains ain't going to help us where we are. So we're going to focus on a lot better. Stuff like that. Like, it doesn't have to be like everyone gets obsessed with marginal gains, but we've got to get the basics right. What are the basics for an athlete? Well, they're getting their sleep. They're done all right. Their training's not stressing them too much. They're getting the right balance in there. They're enjoying it. Those are the basics, right? And then those three alone, like a healthy, balanced diet, those four things alone will build consistency. So you get those four things that are the basic things, right? And then you build that consistency over time. You will keep improving. You're not going to get 1% every day, man. That means every 100 days you're 100% better. That would be, but I believe that's probably not
striving for it, mate. We can strive for it.
Striving to be 100%. Like you're 3 times the man you were at the beginning of the year. That would be.
But like to say it, like I feel like for many people that's something that would be achievable, because I don't, we get co-opted into a way of operating that what is it serving? Like how well is it serving you? And I feel like if everyone's honest, then I don't think 300, not year on year, 300% achievement would be achievable. But
it is interesting, right? So I was listening to a podcast the other day with Steve Ingham and Stephen Siler. So Steve Ingham's he definitely comes from an academic background as well. He supported the likes of Jess Ennis and Kelly Southerton in the heptathlon. He worked with British Rowing and Sir Steve Redgrave. And Stephen Siler's a Texan based in Norway, who's like one of the big. He's the man behind this whole 80% easy, 20% hard kind of idea that was, pinched by Max Fitzgerald. Can I say that? But commercialized by Max Fitzgerald. But he's the academic behind that, a lot of that work. And they were saying that at a kind of top level, what kind of percentage would you take on year as an improvement? They're like, 1%, 2%. If you're getting everything right, if you're the basics, you're at a decent level. Look, aiming for like 1 or 2% improvement a year is gonna make you keep you top of that game. It doesn't have to be 5-10%. I think sometimes we get, especially with the likes of Instagram and this kind of virtual reality where it's addictive improving. And it's in all walks of life, but especially for runners, because at the start we feel a lot of improvement and we're like, well, blimey, you get it sometimes like, I've improved my 5K time from this to this by 2 minutes. So next year I'm going to take another 2 minutes off it. And the faster you get, the harder that becomes. But an athlete might necessarily kind of see that at first. They're like, okay, well, like, why can't I take another 2 minutes off? Well, this is because you've got better, right? So it's going to get harder to get faster, because otherwise within 3 years you would be breaking the world record. But we can't That's not going to happen. I can't promise that as a coach. So it's fine. Like, yeah, accept it. Like, striving to improve. But I think a lot of people get like they have to. I hear this a lot from athletes. I'm in a good place. I just run a PB, but I'm not where I should be. I'm not where I want to be. Like, well, where do you want to be? Because a PB is a PB. It's part of your journey and it's in progression. Like, yeah, I want to be running 2:15 for the marathon. I ain't there. I'm not going to get there without running 2:28 first, probably. Like, maybe 2:25, and then maybe I'll think about running low 2:20s, and then maybe I will be too old to run any faster. So it's finding that balance between, yes, it is about improvement, but we've got to be happy with where we are at the time. It's got to be kind of mindful of how hard you're working and appreciate and enjoy the improvements we have, rather than get caught up in this Instagram, like, what, every day I'm just pumping iron and getting bigger and better, and I'm going to strive for the best. I don't know where that accent come in, but there is a balance. As long as you're improving, and it doesn't necessarily have to be faster and stronger than yesterday.
Yeah.
Because maybe we have some ups and downs. And coming back to where we were, like for me right now, I go out for a run. I am definitely not where I was 12 months ago. I'm a fair way away from that. And I can, what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy. I could look back to last year. That would make me pretty sad. Blimey, I want to be running some miles that start with 5 again, right? Or some Ks that start with 3. But right now, I'm running 8.5, 9-minute miles, and my calves hate me. They're both, and I like this because they're both rock solid. So that's good. Not one or the other. But I'm happy to be out running, because a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't running pain-free. So I'm happy I've made that progress. And yeah, maybe for a little bit, I'm going to make a little bit of a 1% a day, because I'm starting from a lower base. But I'm nowhere near where I was in the past. And I may never reach that. I think I will, but I may never reach that standard again. And if you don't, does that mean you're always unhappy with where you are? Or do you appreciate you're doing the best you can on that particular day? I've gone off on one. I don't even know what the original question was.
No, mate, that's exactly why you're on the podcast. This is what you do best. Yeah, of course, it depends where your values lie and where your desire lies as like what you measure success within your own life. And the whole, I've spoke about this a lot, the whole thought behind what's an achievement and what do you call successful and what do you call an achievement. Largely, they can be pretty different, because you've achieved a lot of things in running, Robbie, but at the end of your life, like, are they what are going to define you to be, well, to have lived a successful life, or would you base that on something else?
Well, I think we chatted before, haven't we, about like the building. Like
we have, yes. We've had many conversations before. Yeah.
Well, that's not helpful to a podcast listener, isn't it? We've discussed this before. Don't worry about it. Just move on. Yeah. No, like, yeah. If you come into this sport, if you come into ultra running particularly, and you win a lot of races, but you leave it without any meaningful relationships from this sport, then I think you've missed the trick, because it's full of good people, I think. And if you don't make good friends out of ultra running, then you're doing it slightly wrong. Yeah, you might win some races, right? Great, but it's nice to have both. I don't would I trade your friendship for a win at UTMB? It's a hard question, right, Mael? I don't want to say it right now. You were best man at my wedding, but would I have had more friends had I won UTMB? Would there have been better friends? I don't think so. But again, tough one. I'm not going to answer that question on your own.
I don't even know the answer, mate, to be honest. Yeah. I don't know the answer.
No. But yeah, what do you want out of this sport? Do you want, and is it about our achievements, about those marks that other people have set, or are they about you feeling you got the best out of yourself? Like so I'm a 24-hour runner. That is probably how I identify most, because it's pointless. But like, and if I could at one day sit back in my old rocking chair, I don't want to live too long, to be fair. So maybe I'll just buy a rocking chair quite early on in life. I'm on one right now. So like, there you go. It doesn't matter. I'm on a rocking chair, so I can die happy. If I sit back and I feel I've given my best over 24 hours, then I'll be happy. I don't feel like I've done it yet because but then again, the body has let me down. If that's the best, if that run in Turin, 261 kilometers, is the best I was capable of, then I gave it my best on that day, but I feel like I can improve other things. If it's still 15k short of Yannis Kouros' world record, then that's where it is. I feel like I can give my best. If I'm 15k of his record, short of his record, and I mean that in itself would be a phenomenal run.
Yes.
And I feel like I haven't given it my best, then I might be more disappointed. So I think it has to be, your motivations need to be intrinsic. We can't help but be bothered by the other stuff. It's human nature to want to get that recognition, to compete against everyone, to just kind of, people go, wow, that was amazing. But if you're happy with it, and that's why I like stuff like the marathon, you see a lot, like people obsessed with times, right? Everything's measured by times, by splits. The shoes you wear, cycling, the bike you have affects the numbers. And the beauty of trail running was that each performance was kind of held by yourself. Like people could say if it was the greatest ever. And I think a little bit with the ITRA scoring, it's taken away from that. It's kind of added a numerical value to every trail run. And I think it takes us a little. I mean, I like their system. I disagree with them on other things, but I like these numbers. I'm a numbers man, but equally I do think it takes away something, and it can bring in an unhealthy aspect to how we get obsessed with this. Oh, I want to get a high number. Not that I want to run my best race in this trail in these conditions. And I've been there. I've had a good race, and I've been like, "Fuck me, yeah, it was a good race. I'm pleased with that. I've won this little Italian race, and I beat the people who are there. It's obviously not a stellar field, but yeah, I'm happy with it." And then the ITRA score comes up, and suddenly I'm unhappy with my performance because someone else has numerically ranked it, and I'm like, "Hold on a second, I was happy with this just before. What's changed? An algorithm's been applied. Why does that matter?"
Yeah, it makes me think about, like if you were running a race and you were in the best shape of your life, you were feeling great, the whole race has been going good, you were definitely going to get your PB, and then in the trail race you come across someone who's like fallen over and sprained their ankle, and you're faced with this decision of like, oh, hang on a second, do I do the, in quotation marks, the right thing here and help this person out, or do I just like continue on having an awesome run and just get that PB? You know what I mean? You're like faced with this moral dilemma of like, because at the end of the day, you should help the runner out. Like, and I say should, I mean, like help the runner out. Don't be like one of those people that comes into this sport or any sport and just like, takes that personal.
Swap it around, right? If you're on the floor with a sprained ankle and you see someone coming past having the race of their life, do you want them to stop to help you with a sprained ankle?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I want someone to do what they feels right. I'm not going to try and force them to do anything else. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like if you need help, it would be pretty handy to get some help.
Definitely, you're going to offer it. There's an interesting for the ultra biking. It's solo, unsupported. So if you pass another rider and they need your support, for them to accept your help is a scratch from the race.
Oh, wow.
Right, so you could be all kinds of dire straits, but you've got to fix it yourself. But if you accept help from one of the other riders, you can have help from strangers that's kind of would have been available to anyone, but you can't have help from the other riders. So to take that situation, and maybe this brings in a bit of like a gender hierarchy as well, because you can imagine a bloke seeing a woman changing a tyre and him insisting he helps, thus disqualifying said person from the race. And the other situation as well, like, so I'm on the floor, if I'm injured, but I'm all right, my life's not in danger. And this has got obviously caveats, right? Head injury, I'm around, right? If there's a head injury, they're not making the right decision. So I'm going to, even if they don't want your help, I'm probably going to stand around. And I had a big discussion of this myself before the first bike race. because obviously cycling, head injuries are possible. I would probably watch someone for a bit. I've done that in races. I've made sure that they've been all right. I've just watched from a distance. I've not actively helped them because they haven't wanted that help. But I've made sure they're all right before you've moved on. And it's the same with the bike stuff. But yeah, is it always the right thing to stop and help? Maybe that person's in the race because they want to overcome certain difficulties themselves. And you, by being there and by offering that assistance, you're taking away that opportunity for them to grow. I'm not saying leave someone bleeding out or head injury again, different because you make poor decisions. But in some ways, you're taking away that opportunity for them to grow by if you're forcing your help on them. That's another way of looking at it. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer there, but I think in some situations, I would always check someone's all right, and I cannot help but offer help.
Yeah.
And if I might offer it 2 or 3 times if I think they really need it, and I might slow down and just check they're all right. But I'm not necessarily going to stop unless they really want to. Because again, maybe they don't. If it's a sprained ankle, I might want to get through that myself and get to the finish line. I don't want some big Aussie fella's help. Leave me alone, mate. I'll be all right. You go on with your race. That's very me. That's not like the other side. I want you to have the race you're having. I want you to enjoy that because I've been there. I've had those days.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, could it be that if you're bonking pretty hard, sometimes you got to get through that, because if someone's always there to help, then you're never going to grow yourself. And, you just got to start eating a bit earlier, but just eating properly. Coming through those challenges yourself is part of why we entered this sport. We want to overcome our own challenges, and is it always the right thing to do?
Oh, it's a great thought experiment, mate. Yeah, it's absolutely one of the good things about chatting to you is you always throw it back at one position. I mean, it would be funny if you were sitting on the side of a trail or on the side of a road with a sprained ankle, and then someone runs up to you and they're like, "Look, I'd love to help you. I seriously am having the best day of my life. I'm running so well right now. Do you mind if I keep running? Is that all right?"
Yeah, are you dying? No, I'm not dying. Just got a sprained ankle. You warm up. You want to
carry on, mate. Carry on. Have a good run.
There's a lady I know. She's a nurse. She's called Eileen Norton. She was winning her club 10-mile championship or something like that. And it's the first time she's in this kind of golden time of her training, and everything was going well. And one of the runners ahead of her had knocked over this old lady, and then run on. And she it wasn't even a second's thought. She stopped, and she then waited there the whole way through. She was winning the club champs. She'd always wanted to win the club champs, but again, the decision was made for her. She didn't have another option. She was never going to keep going. So it depends on the situation, because in that situation, human life is much more important than a running race. Yeah. So it's different. We actually had someone in Joggle, Le Jog, which I'm sure we'll have a natter about, but we were coming out of Warrington, and I was on the bike, Dan Lawson's running, and we see a geezer on the other side of the road, and he just looks hammered, right? But it's a busy road. It's 10 in the morning, and no one's stopping. And Dan's he's just stopped straight away, because he's some people would have just kept going. People obviously were all day, they're just driving past this guy. And I was like, Dan, you keep going. I'm going to go over there. And it just took, 15 minutes. I ended up calling an ambulance for the guy. It took a while to wake him up. I believe he'd drunk too much. He'd been released from hospital. He wasn't in a good place. And then, I left him with a police officer waiting for an ambulance because I flagged down a copper on the way. But so many people drove past, and they weren't even doing anything. I was I wanted to keep up with Dan, but the right thing at that moment in time was to look after that geezer, because Dan was all right. He was just jogging down an A road, as he's usually doing. You're kind of making those decisions at the time. If it had been the case of Dan was in a bad place and this guy was in a bad place, then it's a harder decision to make because of why you're there. But that guy could have been dying. So it took half a second to go, right, I'll catch you up.
Yeah.
I need help.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's we can make a segue out of that. Let's make a segue out of that. Because
I'm giving you an opportunity there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, thanks, mate. I guess you could look at that and compare it to, it's somewhat like of a selfless act in a way. And this is, check my segue out. So after your amazing bike race that you recently did, the one that you were cycling for just a bit over 5 days, the 2,000 kilometers, Three Peaks bike race, I was chatting to you just after you finished. I spoke to you on the phone for about 2 minutes, and you were like, "All right, mate. I'm literally just waiting. Oh, my pizza's just arrived. I've got to go. I'm just going to smash this, mate. See ya." And I was like, you were so animated about this pizza. I was like, get after it. And I thought I was going to contact you after a couple of days, but I thought, he's obviously been on a mission. He's probably going to be sleeping for a few days, so I'll just let him be. And then next thing I know, you were not in Nice in France anymore. You were in England, in the southernmost point of England, about to help out Dan Lawson run the length of Great Britain from Land's End to John O'Groats, otherwise known as Le Jog. Le Jog. And in doing so, get after one of those achievements we were talking about before, which would be breaking the previous record. Can you run us through that experience, mate, and why you decided to? Why did you decide to go out there and help out Dan?
I coach Dan. I have been for about 18 months now. He's one of my fellow runners in the 24-hour squad. But I've been coaching for about 18, 20 months. And we'd originally planned to do this in May of this year. I was going to do a bike race, and then we were going to go and do that to support Dan. And obviously everything changed. And now everyone's doing FKTs as if it was like just what they were planning anyway. We were on it before everyone else thought it was cool. And so Richard Brown had a record of 10 days, 2 hours and 25 minutes. And another chap had set this really dodgy, basically fraudulent, like 9 days, 2 hours, 26 minutes record. That I don't want to get into details of it. I've written about it, or someone else has written about it for Fast Running. If you're interested in the controversy around Will Cockrell wrote about Andy Rivett's fraudulent time. There's some information there. But we were setting off after Richard's mark, and it's just running the length of your country, isn't it? It's kind of it's for an ultra runner, and it's the proper, like, it's around the 10-day mark. It's 820 odd miles he did in the end. It's big. It's not like it's a proper ultra. Which Dan will paraphrase Yanis Kouros to say that anything below 24 hours isn't really an ultra. And I think in the minds, I know, some people would disagree with that. But it comes from a place where, when it's more about the mind than the body, rather than more about the body than the mind. So like 100K is more about the body, the fueling, getting through, and the mind comes into it for sure. The 24 hours beyond the 48 hours, the 6 days, it becomes much more about the mind than it does about the body. And that was very clear throughout Dan's run. Often things would change, and we'd have low points that weren't linked to, obviously he was in a lot of suffering, and he was like, it's very hard to fuel something like this. But if that had been the same 2 hours ago, and now 2 hours later, we're in a massive low because it's the psychological aspect. So it was, I'm not going to lie, August, added in, I was feeling good after the bike race, and added in like this whole kind of 2-week like sufferfest in terms of supporting it did. I was a bit like, I wanted to do this in May, not August. But I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a really, really satisfying thing to be involved with. And Dan was running, and we had Charlotte, his partner. She was driving a camper van. Mick Seymour, who's crewed me on all of my 24-hour races since 2012. He's my dad's childhood friend, but we just very good mates. And he's part of the GB setup for crewing as well. We were the main crew, and Dave McFarland, DM2 Media, he was along to make a film, but he can't help but help. Like, he's a nice guy. So he came out to Jordan with me and Dan. And that was our little party. And we had the other person who was there for maybe 6 of the 10 days was Richard Brown, the previous record holder, he supported Dan in loads of ways, and he supported the record attempt financially as well, supported us. And he was there for, I think, end of day 2, 3 and 4. And then he was up for like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He missed it. He went home and just couldn't leave it alone. So it's really nice because Dan's a phenomenal runner. right? He's just like a wind-up toy. You just wind him up and you let him go. And then we, as a team, had to help him do the other stuff. And then between us, we could, I think, like Dan was able to achieve something like truly remarkable, running under 10 days for the length of the country. And it's not like a 10-day race on a loop. There's hills. There's some of the A roads are absolutely horrific. There's navigation involved, the nutrition, all this kind of stuff. And we ended up on trails and different kind of little shortcuts. I planned all the route, and that was quite fun doing that back in January, trying to optimize the route. I had it down to 815 miles. There was a few wrong turns on a couple of days. I wasn't on duty on those days. I just had, and a couple of diversions we had to take around roadworks and some flooding up in the north. We had to go around, and we ended up with just over 820 miles. Which, like, the first day was 95, 96. A couple of erroneous GPS points on that one. And then after that, the average day was 83 to 85 miles. One day it was 73. It was a lower day because we planned that before going up into wilder countries in Scotland. It gave us a bit of flexibility. So, yeah, it was awesome, man. Absolutely awesome.
And, I mean, I've got to say that's because we've spoken to Dan and Charlotte before from Rerun, and it's awesome to be able to hear about them get on with this mission, because what they do at Rerun is so rad, and they're really, really great people. And I think that really added to seeing Dan be successful at this, because, you know, he just comes from a really, really good place in the heart, and you've been able to spend a lot of time with him, you know, when you both ran the Jordan Trail and ran the length of Jordan, because you were out there on it. That was around about a 10-day mission as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was much more relaxed though. That was chilled. It was, I mean, like, again, Dan was just focused on running, and I was doing the nav and stuff like that, but the days were shorter than they were. We didn't often run into darkness. Whereas on this one, like, an early night finish was 7 p.m. and we were started at 5 or 4:30 some days, but 5 most days. So what's that? 14 hours was the shortest day.
Wow.
Most days finishing 8, half 8, maybe 9, and then towards the end, the days didn't really, like, we ended up having like a sleep in one afternoon, the penultimate day, and then another sleep, 2 3-hour sleeps that day. But he wasn't getting, like, he was getting rest, and he was having some baths in hotels and things, or people's houses. A chap called Martin Bell let us use his house in Aviemore for Dan to have a bath. Very kind of him. At like 10:30 at night. But yeah, it wasn't like there was time between runs, but it wasn't necessarily sleep. It wasn't necessarily rest either, because his legs were so painful he couldn't sleep. Yeah, it was a big old adventure, and he's a good man. That's right there. Like, Dan's got a thing about the universe providing. Like, the universe will provide, will look after him. And it does, because he's good to other people, and other people want to be good to him. I think it's a big part of it. So it's people want to help him out. We had people come out all over the country to run with him. And it was really nice to see some people who've been in there. And he tried it 2 years ago and came up short, tried it the other way. And some people from those adventures came out, and it was just like lovely to see that kind of bonding again, like certain towns. It was Kinross. We had a whole, like, basically like half the town, it felt like it was out. It was only like 10, 12 people maybe, but there was loads of different people out, and they were all out to run with Dan because he's a nice guy. Towns outside Bridge of Orkney, I think it was, just outside Perth. Just like people were out clapping in the street because a few people knew about it, and yeah, it was just lovely to see everyone out. But even like the last town, Wick, the last town in the British Isle, Great Britain rather than the British Isles. Just one geezer on a bridge just went like, "Well done, Dan," as he was coming through. And that was it. Like, the rest of the town was just going about its business normally. But just really nice to see everyone out, to see him, a nice guy, achieving something pretty spectacular. And and he did it all in second-hand kit, which is another thing from Rerun. He doesn't want to get like new fancy stuff. He borrowed some of my shoes at one point. And I thought, he said he was like, I said, what size shoes? He said, 8, 9. So I got a pair of 9s. He fell over a couple of times. And I was like, why are you falling over? Your shoes are a bit big for me. I'm normally like a 7. You're like, all right, well, let's get you some 7s then, rather than you wearing these. They were more cushioned shoes. But there was second hand. I bought them years ago, actually. So they're mine. They're not brand new spanking shoes. But yeah, all his kit was second hand. Like everything. Well, it's second hand, or he's owned them for years and years and years. I think it's been a few years since he's bought anything new. And if he buys stuff, he buys it from Rerun. So second hand stuff that gets sent in, he'll buy stuff that he might need himself. So it's all second hand kit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's yeah, I mean, so 820 miles, about 1,300 kilometers. What were the things that stood out as just huge challenges throughout that experience? You know, like what are the things that Dan came up with that, you know, you'd expect sore legs, painful legs to an extent that I couldn't imagine right now.
It's to a level, a constant level, and he doesn't talk about the pain. He said it wasn't that painful, but because he's just almost numb to it.
Yeah,
like that level he's accepted after a couple of days. He said after a couple of days it gets better, like it's less painful. But I feel like he just kind of, again, it's psychological. He's just used to that level of pain. The fueling was fantastic, like really fantastic. I think I worked out he went through, I want to say 58 packets of Science in Sport Beta Fuel, which is, each of them's got 80 grams of carbs in. But he was fueling on that the whole way through. That was really, really useful. But then every time he went to the van, he would eat some real food, some cheese sandwiches, I don't know, yogurt covered raisins, all kinds of different foods, like real foods, some pizza some night, scampi and chips a couple of nights. Like he was eating real food the whole way through, and he was looking forward to that.
What's scampi and chips, mate?
It's just like bits of fish in batter. Sound British? There you go.
Yeah, you might have to send some over. I've got no idea what scampi is, mate.
I mean, you're a vegan, so I'm not going to send you some scampi. So,
thanks, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, because that would trick you, wouldn't it? It's all right. It's nice. It was just as good to see him eating. Yeah, like so he ate really well. And it was, any challenge like this is a big thing. And I think for Dan, it's something we've been working on in training and in different races, is making sure it's kind of fueling enough for him to do what he does. And it was something I recognised in Jordan. That it was in the first few days, I was making sure he was eating and drinking enough. And then the last few days, when he just kept kind of shooting off ahead, I was making sure he bonked, so I had a chance to have a breather.
So how do you hold space for an athlete that you've been working with for quite a while in that context? How do what did you do to help him, support him? Was it just the simplest thing of being there and just encouraging him along the way?
Whatever was necessary. There was no limit to what was needed to be done. It got done. But I mean, one of the interesting things on the last day wasn't being there. Actually, for me, a pivotal moment. I don't know if Dan agrees, but I've spoken about it a few times. On the last day, he'd had another 3 hours sleep, and he had about 84 miles to go and 20 odd hours to break the record. And he did it by 3 hours in the end, I think, or 4 hours. The thing for me that was pivotal in him succeeding at that moment in time was leaving him alone, because our faces as a crew couldn't put it across to him that we believed in him, because he was kippered. He couldn't run. He was like, his leg was dragging around. The night before, he'd been going so slowly that he was going to miss the record. We put him to sleep, got him up again. He wasn't moving properly. And we were like, all of us just had these massive doubts. Dan, he needs us to believe in him. So what I felt like we had to do was to leave him on the side of the road and go, well, mate, we'll see you in a bit. To show that we trusted he could do it. And I think that was a big moment for him, because I left him just as he'd started to run again. And I could have cycled alongside him maybe 10 minutes later, going, oh, Rob, it really hurts his ankle. It'd have been, but on his own. And he does most of his training on his own. He's very, he's very happy in his own company. He gets into the zone and just gets it done. But on his own, he left him to it and he got the job done. I think I ran with him for one little section for 3 or 4 miles after that. And then I cycled the final bit in the dark because we had the lights and stuff on the bike and the fuel. But before that, he just did, 65 miles on his own. Just got it done because we trusted him. And I think that helped him a lot. He showed that we believed in him. There was no other way to show him. I couldn't tell him. My face betrayed my lack of confidence. My voice was full of doubt. Whereas just leaving him alone was the only way we could actually let him know that we believed in him. But on other days, it was there, being there kind of, a lot of times I sat behind on the bike and other people would chat to him, or if I could tell he needed a bit of quiet time, I might cycle alongside. So then he had to kind of, and I talk a lot. And so even if I'm trying to be quiet, there's still noise. And that was one of the nice things as well, actually. One of the moments that stuck out for me, or not one moment, but we were on busy A roads. So not quite a motorway, but one below. And like the A9 the A30 in Cornwall there's 2 lanes, sometimes 3 lanes. It looks and smells and acts just like a motorway. There's lorries all along it. It's the main road out of the southwest, but it's an A road, so you're allowed to run on it. So cycling on that, we had a motorbike outrider, Steve, who came with us for. He was there for most of the first day, and it made a huge difference. Just because otherwise, because people were so aggressive that they just thought you was some like knobheads running and cycling on the side of the A road. And then up in the A9, it was the same. But every now and again, on those really busy roads, there would be a 10, 15, 20-second silence. And it was brilliant. It wasn't, because you just got used to the noise, but it was the absence of noise that was louder than anything. You were just like, wow, it's silent. So those stuck out for me. And then I would obviously speak. Oh man, listen, it's silent again. And they go, oh, you've ruined it, Robbie. I really like that. There's silent. There's 1 or 2 of them that just really stick out. One on the A9, middle of nowhere. And that moment of silence really sticks out. You're like, wow. Yeah, I remember that. Kind of. So yeah, that was cool. And yeah, just throughout, I was there to make sure he had the option to eat. I cycled a lot of it. Did the navigation because Dan just needs to focus on running. Something like that, you can't be concerned with everything else. So it was a big team effort. It was a team effort. That's all I'm saying. It was just a real team effort, and it was nice. Mate. Yeah.
How much of your, I don't know how much you like to use the word, say, life coaching, but how much of that do you bring into your work as a coach? You're trying to coach runners. How much do you bring that element into it?
You're coaching an individual. That's what it is. It's coaching. It's not life coaching, or I could go do a 2-day life coaching course where I get taught how to add life coach to my Twitter profile. It's just you coach an individual. Yes, There's so much like other stuff, and you can, if you setting a training plan is a really small part of coaching. Like if you've got 200 athletes and you're setting 200 personalized training plans, I don't think that's coaching, because coaching is about working with an individual and learning about them, and then learning about you and building a relationship of trust. Yes, a part of that is building a training plan, but it doesn't always have to be. You could be coaching someone and actually you're not writing a prescriptive training plan every day, because that's not what they need at that moment in time. So coaching's coaching. It's not like any coach. A business coach has got to coach the individual, and life coach as such, they might have to coach like some of the training. I don't know. I don't do any life coaching, not to the best of my knowledge. But and there are times when you have to respect that you might be outside your realm of expertise, and you have to pass on to another expert that might be able to deal better with a certain aspect of that athlete's situation. That's part of it, kind of realizing your own limitations and not trying to fix everything for them. Because again, the athlete's got to do a lot of it themselves. I think I could talk about coaching all day, but part of it is just, what was the one? A good coach try and make themselves redundant. So if you can help teach an athlete to cope on themselves and to set their own training, learn, like educate. I'm a big, I ask more questions than give answers. I think a few people I coach would say. So they'll ask me a question and I'll come back with another one, which at first infuriates a lot of them. But I want an athlete to learn. Like if they suddenly go, oh, Robbie, I want to set my own training for a while. Great. That's cool. Like what have you learned that you're going to use for your own training? So yeah, you coach. That's the coach individual, and whatever comes of that. Accept your boundaries and don't take too much on yourself. Like you can't change. Like if their work's bad, you can ask them about it. You can say, what are you doing to change that? How can you improve that? You can't give them the answers. You can ask them. You can ask them the right questions. You can't give them all the answers. So yeah, what is a life coach? Like, why don't you tell me, and maybe I can let you know if I am one.
I appreciate your answer on that, because I know it's something that you like extremely. I'd say you're one of the best coaches I know. Like I've had the opportunity to sit in the background, not intentionally, but I've definitely been within earshot of a lot of your coaching conversations with your clients, and it's and it really, yeah, you've got a huge element of like human care that you apply to any coaching relationship that you have, and it's truly commendable. I think it's like you say, it really is personalized. It's it is hard to understand how you could really coach 80 people at one time or 60 people at one time, if you're giving true customized, personalized plans. That goes far beyond a training plan from Sunday to Saturday a week. So you touched on it before, like everyone is doing FKTs at the moment, fastest known times. And you've definitely got involved in a lot of awesome FKT style adventures in the past. Like I remember when you and James Elston ran across Iceland. Then, we mentioned before you and Dan ran across Jordan. Now the awesome work that you're doing in the bike world. What have you got dreamt up, mate, for the future?
I'm just going to add, because one of your, was it Tyson? Is it Tyson Nangatura? How do you pronounce his second name? Not
Tyson Yunkaporta.
Yunkaporta, yeah. He spoke about Dunbar's number. I found it quite interesting. The maximum number of relationships that one person can hold is like around 150, and that's not deep kind of meaningful. That's just in that's relationships, and that includes your family, your friends, everything. Your milkman maybe. And it comes back to that, like how many meaningful relationships can you hold, even like without the most fancy training platforms. Like that might tell you what a runner's done, give you their TSS score and stuff like that. But how does it help you build a relationship? So that was just the one thing I had on there. Like, and I coach around 30 people, which I think is probably too many anyway. But it grows over time, and some of those people I've been coaching 5, 6, 7 years. And the relationships sometimes become easier over that time, but actually, you just got to keep working at it and keep looking at yourself to see if you can't provide the right relationship for those people, then you've got to change. But then you asked another question, because I just wanted to say that thing, and now what was the other question? It was about FKTs. Your
adventure, mate. You love a good adventure. You've inspired a lot of people, I think, with the adventures that you've got on, and just kind of what have you got dreamt up, mate?
It's just fancy holidays, really. I've never. Dan's Lejog was a proper FKT. He was going after a solid record. There was give or take. It was kind of what an adventure without risk is no adventure at all. This one had the risk of failure written all over it. Whereas a lot of the stuff we've done, Iceland, there was stuff that went up and down, but the record was never. The times I've picked a couple like Jordan, the FKT. I'm not saying it was soft, right? And funny enough, they don't recognise us, the FKT holders there, the Jordan Trail. Get this, they because we were on the trail for longer hours, so we did 90 odd hours of running over just over 9 days, and the people who they feel held the record did 85 hours of running over 14 days, including 2 rest days, and they're like, well, they hold the record. I don't think you truly understand how that works, mate. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got stuff planned. You know what? I'm just coming back from this injury, so I've got to kind of temper my. I have actually not been planning adventures for a while. Like, I backed off planning my own running adventures because I just wanted to get back running. As soon as I run, so the last few weeks, last couple of weeks, a friend, Paul Tierney, who's got some wicked adventures of his own, like the big Wainwright's one. If you haven't seen that movie, that's by Dave McFarlane as well. Paul Tierney's Wainwright's record. That's pretty cool. He's been helping with some stuff around my foot. He follows a guy called Gary Wade. He's got a book, Walk the Foot, and helping me adjust how I'm using my feet a bit. And I think it's helped me turn a corner with his injury. So thank you to Paul for that, big Irishman. And I've started to plan little things again. But like, I want to go back to what I wanted to do. I want to do those 48-hour kind of efforts. But I will start looking at some more adventures. I had some stuff in Baikal, in Siberia that I want to do. I kind of prosper a bit better in colder environments when running. Dan more so in the heat. James Elson, yeah, I think he likes it not windy because he's quite picked up in the air. So yeah, it's just finding the right adventure with the right people as well. Because I could do some solo FKT stuff, and there is some on there. I would one day love to have a crack at. It's now Damien Hall's Pennine Way record. One day, but that was on my mind for years because of reading Mike Cudihay's books, Wild Trails to Wild Horizons or Wild Trails to Far Horizons. He was the first man to run it under 3 days. So I love that kind of 3 day. So I'd love to run it under 3 days one time. Whether that's I can run it in a record time or not is here nor there. I'd love to, from a personal level, try to do it under 3 days. But yeah, just anything. Just the world of possibility opens up if you can go running again.
So what advice would you give a friend of yours who was in your situation with coming back from this injury?
I'd probably tell him to start sensibly, yeah. Oh, that's boring. Start with some smaller goals. I just want to go straight in at the deep end. It's hard, isn't it? Because it's very different for everyone. So it depends on the type of injury. If the injury you come back from and then you've got a fresh body again, because I've been doing 12 months of cycling. My muscles are all right. I've got a massage every week from Alan Rankin, who supported Dan's. He's a physio with us for the 24-hour team, and he drove bloody hours to support Dan during the jog. I think the longest one was like 4.5 hour drive, just to help Dan at the end of the night. And then he'd go back and he's working with like some top athletes like Laura Muir and Gemma Reekie, top world class athletic stars. And then he's finishing his clinic and driving to help Dan at night. It was so like lovely. And he massaged my leg, and I was surprised he didn't have that look of shock that people have when they massage my legs. They're like, "Are they all right?" And I was like, "What do you mean they're all right? They're never all right." So maybe I've got fresh legs that I can smash to pieces again all over if my feet are working now. So yeah, I would probably advise someone to build back up, to do some shorter distances, maybe try a marathon or a trail race, and then start building the bigger stuff. But what excites you is what's important as well. Because if you're not going to get out of bed for your training to do marathon training, then that's a whole other part of it as well. If it doesn't excite you, then you've got to do what you enjoy. And yeah, because it's the kind of trade-off. If I was to go and do a 48-hour race next week and it put me out of action for 6 months, so that's a balance, isn't it? That's just stupid. But I like long-term goals, like where do you want to be in like 3, 4, 5 years? Now you can start planning those things again. Build back from that. But what's gonna motivate you? I do get motivated by the numbers, like for the 24-hour. But actually, the 24-hour, I don't want to do a 24-hour again next. I want to do a 48-hour. But that part of that psychological, because I don't have a kind of a previous comparison to make the 48-hour. So I can go run a decent 24-hour within that maybe, right? Yeah. But I don't have these numbers that play in my mind. So if I have a low point, then in 6 hours, in 8 hours, I'm not going to be like, I'm never going to make 2:61. Whereas if you go back into a 24-hour, the second it doesn't go to plan, it's a harder battle if you've got something to compare against. Same with a marathon. If at mile 16 of a marathon, you drop a K or a mile that's below your average pace for what you need, and you know you've done that, and your head can drop. It's just easier for it to drop. Whereas if you don't have a comparison, it's your first marathon. You're not confined by that as much. Often you'll go too fast. But it's kind of, I'd like to do something that I admit it's a softer approach. I would approach the longer race because it removes that extra psychological stress. There's more physical stress, and there's probably more new psychological stress I'll get to experience. But it gives me a chance to not compare myself to the Robbie of old. And I still think I could beat the Robbie of old. God, I'm talking in the third person. What a dickhead. I still think I can beat my previous times. I've got a lot. I mean, I've been doing this for nearly 11 years. It's 11 years in a month's time since my first ultra. And I'm still only 33. so I've got plenty of time. I still feel I can achieve some decent stuff. I'd like to set some British records. I did have a British record once, apparently. And Dan Lawson took it. And when he took it, he was like, "Oh, I've taken the British road 24-hour record." I said, "Oh, who had it before?" And he's like, "You did." I was like, "What? What? No, I don't think I did. I don't know, but I'd like to actually hold a British record. That'd be nice. But there's a few decent ones. They're not soft. So I'd like to go for one of them. Might go for the 5K. That's been Mark Scott broke that recently, 13:20. Should I go for that one? Maybe we'll stick with the 24-hour stuff. They've got
that's some serious running. But like you said, dude, at the end of the day, with or without a record to your name, as long as you're a good bloke and we end up hanging in a room having a good laugh, with or without rocking chairs, that's all I really care about. Record or not, mate.
Well, I mean, I'll maybe let you in my house if you just have one record left when you get to old age. They all get broken, don't they? That's why I like having a medal, because you're always going to have a medal for third place. It's not that good, is it, really? I'd like to have a medal for first place, because that's then always yours, regardless of if it was a soft year or not. Just do it. But just get your own shit. Just do it. Do what you're happy with. End of the day.
What's the last bit of wisdom you're going to leave us with on this conversation today, Robbie?
Last bit of wisdom. None of us really have true wisdom, mate. We don't know anything. Just keep trying to learn. That's it. That's all I got. I haven't got any sparkling secrets that are going to make you the better runner. Just keep turning up, keep trying to learn, and you'll get somewhere. I don't know where, but you'll get somewhere if you try your best. And just be happy with where you are.
I like it, man. And
you know what's saying? I'll end with something about reruns, because Dan, I was chatting to Charlotte whilst Dan was just running down A roads. She's like, "What's the oldest bit of clothing you own?" And I think it's that suit that you wore for the wedding. I've had that for like 20 years, like 18, 17, 19 years now. And you wore it for the wedding. The sleeves were a little small. I don't know if people know, I'm actually half the size of my O in terms of dimensions. So the sleeves were a little short. But yeah, that suit, yeah. That and a sparkly red man thong are the two items of clothing I've owned longer than any other client. They're both around the same time.
And so, I only borrowed the suit. I didn't borrow the sparkly man thong.
Yeah, no, man, that thing is tiny. But I mean, it's there if you need it, because I'm all up for sharing clothes.
And we do need to clarify, I did only borrow the suit jacket, the pants.
Trousers would have been brilliant.
The trousers did not.
It barely fit me. It didn't fit me when I bought them. And then I would say I got the suit quite cheap, and then I tailored my body to fit into the suit. Because it was cheaper than getting a tailored suit.
Well, mate, we're going to have to come up with an adventure equal to the extremities of getting married, because that's something I'll help you out with. All right.
Let's start one step at a time. Next time you can get anywhere near Europe, then we'll do an adventure.
Yes.
Let's get outside of Melbourne. You can't even get out of Melbourne now, can you?
Can't even get out of 5K radius of the house. So
that's the first stage, mate. Just be patient. Wait till you can get 5K away from your house.
Small steps.
Yeah.
I'll count on you for support, Robbie.
There you go.
Good advice, mate. Thanks for chatting, Robbie. You're a good man. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and thanks a lot for tuning in. We really appreciate Robbie and his time, and we hope Robbie has an incredible future ahead in his cycling endeavours, and we also cannot wait to welcome him back to the world of running as soon as that can happen. So, thanks a lot for tuning in. Again, please reach out to us if you like at Stokely Podcast on Instagram or on Facebook, and we really, really hope you have a good day, evening, morning, whenever you may listen to this. So thanks a lot, and keep well.